let's just start with what's been happening on the stock market today. We do see the bourse moving a little bit higher. What is driving that positivity on the bourse?
Okay, we have seen the NSE hit a 8-month high this week, and we are looking at it as a positive sentiment from investors that's driving the market. We also see the momentum is there, and the NSE should edge higher, bearing profit taken from investors who will be cashing in based on the returns they've made over the last few weeks.
So are you expecting a pullback then? If you talk about that profit taking, are you expecting a pullback to happen this week?
Yes, on specific counters that have done specifically well over the last few weeks. For instance, Uchumi, supermarkets, probably KCB, and some of the other counters that have gained, say, about 10% over the last 2 weeks.
One of the companies that we saw going back into the market today was the East Africa Portland Cement Company. That company they've lifted a ban on that company. It was suspended. It went back on the bourse today, but unfortunately traders are saying that they haven't seen much activity or interest in that particular stock. What do you think is happening on that front?
On East African Portland Cement, we have seen it returning to the stock exchange and trading. So far, we saw a few trades, and the stock moved from 56 to about 60 shillings last week. But as it has been the case over the last few weeks or the last few months, the counter is illiquid, and we don't see much activity on the counter, and this should continue going into the next few weeks.
What do you think investors would like to see from this company, though, to turn that around?
Okay, with East African Portland Cement, it has to do with the shareholding structure of the company, because the free float is minimal, and that's what's affecting trading on the share. Because the top shareholders are either the government or the National Social Security Fund, and these are not investors who trade quite often on the share.
Okay, let's move on to what's happening on the Kenyan shilling. On the currency front there, we did see it gaining some strength against the dollar, flat slightly to the positive. It was 0.07%. What is fueling that strength right now?
Okay, the shilling has been stable over the last few weeks, and this should continue into the next few weeks, because the central bank is happy with the levels at which the shilling is trading against the dollar and other foreign currencies. Over the last few days, we have seen it trade a little volatile against the Tanzanian and South African shilling, but it's performing relatively stable, and this should continue the next 2 or so weeks.
So here's what we're hearing over here. We're hearing that tax payments due this week are expected to tighten liquidity, and that could drive up into bank rates. Your take on that? Do you think that could happen?
Yes, actually, I've seen this happening, because last week we saw the interbank rate hit a low of 10%. The last few days it edged higher. We saw it close at 13% last week, and yesterday it closed at about 15%. So it shows that there's tightening liquidity, and this could affect the performance of the money markets in coming weeks.
Well, let's just talk a little bit about what's happening in the global arena, and we've seen it with most economies, or whatever is happening in Europe. It seems to have, not seems to, it does have an impact on our economies. Let's talk a little bit about what's happening in Europe, and with particular interest with what's happening with Spain. The risk aversion following surging Spanish costs when it comes to their borrowing, and that seems to be a problem right now. How do you think this is going to impact on Kenya, and when do you think this is going to be? Because right now traders are saying they're not seeing much of an impact or that filter through to the Kenyan market as yet.
Actually, the global economy is becoming a bit interlinked. So we're going to see the effect trickling down to the Kenyan economy as much as it will affect other countries in Africa. The debt crisis for sure will affect remittances into our economy. Over the last few weeks, we have seen foreign investor participation declining, but another reason is local investors have become particularly active, and they're actually the segment of investors driving the NSE higher.
So when you see this happening on the horizon, and the news that we're receiving right now is that the government of Kenya is planning to reduce development spending by about 17.3 billion. Now, when you hear those numbers and seeing that there is trouble that seems to be coming on the horizon, and then you've got the Kenyan government then contracting on what they plan to spend on the economy, do you see that as a problem going forward?
Okay, going forward, it's going to be a difficult period because we are seeing government revenues declining or not as growing as fast as its expenditure. And this means a growing budget deficit. So already we're seeing government debt spiraling and an increase in issuances of government paper. But I think our debt levels are still sustainable, and there's more room to borrow for the government.